If you are an INFJ who has ever dimmed your light, softened your truth, or made yourself smaller to make others comfortable, this is the moment you stop apologizing for your power. There is an ancient Greek concept called kenosis, the act of emptying oneself, of pouring out one's essence, until nothing remains. The philosophers spoke of it as divine sacrifice, but for the INFJ, it becomes something else entirely. It becomes a survival strategy, a pattern so deeply woven into the fabric of who you are, that you no longer recognize it as a choice. You hide your power not because you lack it, but because you have learned, through 1,000 small betrayals and rejections, that the world is not ready for what you carry. The first reason you hide runs deeper than fear. It is rooted in a truth that Jung understood when he wrote about the wounded healer, the archetype of one who knows suffering intimately and uses that knowledge to transform others. You hide your power because you learned early that being seen fully was dangerous. Perhaps you were the child who knew things you should not have known, who felt the unspoken tensions in every room, and who understood the adults around you better than they understood themselves. You spoke your truth once, twice, perhaps a dozen times, and each time you were met with discomfort, dismissal, or worse, the accusation that you were too much, too intense, or too knowing. So you learned to read the room before you entered it, to calibrate your presence to what others could handle, to become a mirror that reflected back what people wanted to see, rather than what was actually there. This is not weakness. This is the survival instinct of someone who realized that their natural state threatened the carefully constructed illusions others needed to maintain. You became fluent in the language of concealment, not because you wanted to disappear but because you wanted to belong. The wound became your teacher, and the lesson was clear. Power must be hidden to be safe. The second reason emerges from what Nietzsche called the will to power, but inverted, turned inward, transformed into something the philosophers never quite anticipated. You hide your power because you have seen what power does to people, how it corrupts, how it isolates, how it turns human beings into tyrants and monsters. You have witnessed, perhaps in your own family, or perhaps in the world at large, the devastation that comes when someone wields influence, without conscience, without empathy, without the deep moral sensitivity that defines your very existence. So you made a silent vow, conscious or not, that you would never become that. You would never use your insight to manipulate, your intuition to control, or your understanding of human nature to exploit. The irony is exquisite and painful. In your determination to avoid becoming a monster, you neutered your own strength, you clipped your own wings, and you locked away the very gifts that could heal rather than harm. You confused power with domination, influence with exploitation, and strength with cruelty. This confusion is not accidental. You have absorbed the shadow projections of a world that fears genuine power, that mistakes authentic authority for authoritarian control. The INFJ who hides their power in this way is like Prometheus, who, having stolen fire from the gods, refuses to give it to humanity for fear of what they might do with it. But the fire was never meant to be hoarded. It was meant to illuminate, to warm, to transform. Your power is not the same as the power you fear. Your influence is rooted in understanding, not manipulation. Your strength comes from depth, not dominance. Yet you have spent years, perhaps decades, conflating the two, and in doing so you have deprived the world of precisely what it needs most. Power tempered by conscience, strength guided by empathy, influence wielded with wisdom. The third reason takes us into the realm of what Jung called individuation, the lifelong process of becoming who you truly are, of integrating the shadow, of reconciling the opposites within yourself. You hide your power because claiming it requires you to step out of the collective, to separate yourself from the tribe, to stand alone in a way that triggers every evolutionary instinct that screams at you, to conform, to blend, to survive by belonging. The INFJ is caught in a particular kind of hell. You are wired for deep connection, for understanding others, for creating harmony, and facilitating growth in those around you. Yet your true power only emerges when you individuate, when you step away from the role of perpetual counselor, eternal empath, infinite giver. This creates an almost unbearable tension. Claiming your power means risking the very connections you value most. It means saying no when you have always said yes, setting boundaries when you have always been boundaryless, prioritizing your own vision when you have always prioritized others' needs. It means accepting that some people will leave, that some relationships will end, that the version of you they loved was never really you at all, but rather a carefully constructed performance designed to meet their expectations. This is the loneliest threshold you will ever cross. Plato spoke of the philosopher who escapes the cave, who sees the sunlight and understands the true nature of reality. But he also spoke of what happens when that philosopher returns to the cave, to share what they have learned. The prisoners, comfortable in their chains, comfortable with the shadows on the wall, do not thank the philosopher. They reject them, they mock them, and they sometimes kill them. You know this story intimately, because you have lived it. You have glimpsed truths that others cannot see. You have understood patterns that others refuse to acknowledge. And when you have tried to share these insights, you have been met with resistance, hostility, or blank incomprehension. So you learn to stay in the cave, to pretend you see only shadows, to hide the fact that you have stood in the sunlight. But individuation demands that you stop pretending. It demands that you honor what you know, even when others cannot follow. It demands that you claim your power, not despite the loneliness but through it. The fourth reason touches on what the mystics have always understood. The true power is not loud, aggressive, or performative. You hide your power because you have been conditioned by a world that equates power with visibility, with self-promotion, with the ability to dominate conversations and command attention. The INFJ's power is different. It is the power of the depth, not the surface. It is the power of transformation, not transaction. It is the power that works in silence, in subtlety, in the spaces between words. But we live in a culture that does not recognize this kind of power. We live in a world that values the extroverted ideal, that rewards those who speak loudest, who claim credit most aggressively, who perform their competence most convincingly. The INFJ watches this theater with a mixture of bewilderment and exhaustion. You do the deep work, you create genuine change, you transform lives in ways that cannot be measured or quantified, and then you watch as others take credit, as the superficial is celebrated while the profound is ignored. So you learned to hide, not because your power is weak but because the world does not have the eyes to see it, the ears to hear it, the sensitivity to recognize it. You learned that stepping forward means engaging in a game you find fundamentally distasteful, means participating in a performance you consider beneath you, means translating your depth into soundbites and your complexity into social media posts. The disgust you feel is valid, the system is broken, but your response, hiding your power completely and abandoning the field to those who wield influence without wisdom, is not the answer. There is a middle path, one that Jung himself walked. It requires you to find ways to share your power that honor your nature, to communicate your depth in forms that reach people where they are, to translate your vision into language the world can understand, without betraying the essence of what you know. This is not a compromise. This is mastery. This is the artist who understands that the greatest truths must sometimes be dressed in stories, in myths, in forms that slip past the rational mind and touch something deeper. You do not need to become something you are not. You need to become more fully what you are, with the added skill of communication, of translation, of building bridges between the depths you inhabit and the surfaces where others live. The fifth reason is perhaps the most painful, the most difficult to acknowledge. You hide your power because you are exhausted. The INFJ carries what Jung called the transcendent function, the ability to hold opposites in tension, to see multiple perspectives simultaneously, to understand the paradoxes that define human existence. This is your gift, but it is also your burden. You see the light and the shadow in everyone, including yourself. You understand the complexity, the nuance, the infinite shades of gray, in a world that demands black and white, good and evil, us and them. This constant state of awareness, of holding space for contradiction, of refusing simplistic narratives, is profoundly depleting. You watch as others find rest in certainty, in ideology, in the comfort of knowing they are right and others are wrong. You see the price of that certainty, the violence it enables, the empathy it destroys, but you also feel the weight of living without it. So you hide your power, because stepping forward means carrying this weight publicly, means refusing to offer people the simple answers they crave, means insisting on complexity in a world that rewards reductionism. It is easier to stay silent, to let others lead, to conserve your energy for the small sphere where you can make a difference, without exhausting yourself completely. But there is a cost to this retreat, and the cost is your soul. Nietzsche warned of what happens when you deny your nature for too long, when you suppress the life force that seeks expression through you. He called it resentment, a toxic brew of repressed power that ferments into bitterness, resentment, and passive aggression. The INFJ, who hides their power for too long, does not find peace. They find a slow, corrosive despair, a sense that life is passing them by, that their gifts are dying unused, that they are betraying something essential within themselves. The exhaustion you feel is real, but hiding makes it worse, not better. Power that is hidden does not disappear. It turns inward, it becomes toxic, and it manifests as anxiety, depression, and physical illness. The path forward is not to hide, but to learn how to wield your power in ways that sustain rather than deplete you. To find your people, your true tribe, the ones who do not need you to shrink, who can meet you in your depth without fear or discomfort. Now we come to the how, to the practice of reclaiming what you have hidden, of stepping into the power you were born to carry. This is not a simple process. It is not a matter of deciding one day to be different, of willing yourself into confidence, of positive thinking your way out of patterns that have protected you for decades. This is alchemical work, transformative work, the kind of work that Jung said was necessary for true individuation. The first step is recognition. You must see, clearly and without judgment, how you have hidden your power. What are the specific ways you make yourself smaller? Do you soften your language, adding qualifiers and apologies to every statement? Do you hold back your insights, waiting for someone else to say what you already know? Do you defer to others, even when you know their path leads nowhere? Do you overfunction in service roles while underfunctioning in leadership? Do you give away your ideas freely, only to watch others get credit? Do you avoid conflicts so thoroughly that you never advocate for yourself? Write these patterns down. Name them. See them as strategies, not flaws. They served you once. They kept you safe in environments that could not handle your full presence. Honor them for what they were and then recognize that they are no longer serving you. The context has changed, or more accurately, you must change your context. The second step is reclamation of voice. Start small, but start. Practice stating your observations without softening them. If you see a pattern, name it. If you have an insight, share it. If you know something is true, say so without adding 17 qualifiers. This will feel uncomfortable, even dangerous. Your nervous system will sound alarms. You will feel exposed, vulnerable, convinced that you are being too much, too intense, too knowing. This is precisely the feeling you must learn to tolerate. Not by forcing yourself, not by overriding your instincts, but by recognizing that the discomfort is historical, not present. You are not that child anymore, the one who was punished for seeing too much. You are not in that environment anymore, the one that could not handle your truth. You are consciously choosing now to surround yourself with people who can meet you fully, and that means you must show them who you fully are. The third step is boundary work, which for the INFJ is simultaneously the most important and most difficult practice. You cannot claim your power while hemorrhaging energy to everyone who asks for it. You cannot lead while positioning yourself as the eternal supporter. You cannot create while spending all your creative energy solving everyone else's problems. Boundaries are not walls, they are not rejection. They are the architecture of sustainable power, the structure that allows you to give from overflow rather than depletion. This means learning to say no, not as rejection but as discernment. It means recognizing that your time, your energy, your emotional labor, your insight, these are not infinite resources to be given freely to anyone who asks. They are precious, sacred even, and they must be stewarded wisely. When you say yes to everyone, you are saying no to yourself, to your own work, to your own vision, to your own calling. The guilt you feel when you set boundaries is not evidence that you are doing something wrong. It is evidence that you are breaking a pattern, challenging an old story, and stepping out of a role that others have become comfortable with. Let them be uncomfortable. Their discomfort is not your responsibility. Your responsibility is to your own integrity, to the work only you can do, to the power only you can wield. The fourth step is finding your people, your true tribe, the ones Jung would call companions on the path of individuation. You cannot reclaim your power in isolation, nor can you do so surrounded by people who need you to stay small. You need witnesses, allies, people who have done their own work, who understand the cost of authenticity, who can celebrate your power rather than feel threatened by it. These people are rare, but they exist. They are often other INFJs, other deep thinkers, other wounded healers who have chosen to stop hiding. They are the ones who do not need you to perform, to caretake, to dim your light. They meet you in your depth, and it feels like coming home. Finding these people requires vulnerability, requires you to show up as you actually are, rather than as you think you should be. It requires you to stop performing connection and start experiencing it. This means risking rejection, means accepting that not everyone will understand you, and means getting comfortable with the fact that you are not for everyone. But when you find your people, when you experience what it feels like to be fully seen and fully accepted, you will understand that all the hiding was just a way to postpone the life you were meant to live. The fifth and final step is the daily practice of embodiment, of bringing your power out of the realm of concept and into lived reality. This is where most people fail, not because they lack understanding but because they lack practice. Power is not a state you achieve once and then maintain. It is a practice, a daily choice, a moment-by-moment decision to show up fully, even when every instinct screams at you to hide. This means small acts of courage, repeated until they become natural. It means speaking up in meetings, even when your voice shakes. It means sharing your work, even when you are convinced it is not good enough. It means asking for what you want, even when you are terrified of rejection. It means standing in your truth, even when others pressure you to compromise. It means trusting your intuition, even when you cannot explain it rationally. Each of these small acts is a thread, and over time these threads weave together into a new pattern, a new way of being in the world. You will stumble. You will have days when hiding feels easier, when the old patterns call you back with seductive promises of safety. This is not failure. This is the nature of transformation. 2 steps forward, 1 step back, always moving, always growing, always becoming more fully who you were meant to be. The question is not whether you will falter, but whether you will return to the practice, whether you will choose power over hiding, Expansion over contraction. Truth over performance. This is your work now. Not to be perfect, but to be real. Not to have all the answers, but to trust that you carry something the world needs. Not to eliminate the fear, but to act despite it. Your power was never gone. It was only hidden, waiting for the moment when you were ready to reclaim it, when the cost of hiding finally exceeded the cost of being seen. If this resonated with you, if you recognized yourself in these patterns, you are not alone. The INFJ journey of reclaiming power is one of the most challenging paths to transformation, but also one of the most necessary. The world does not need more people hiding their light. It needs you, fully expressed, courageously visible, wielding your power with the wisdom and compassion that define who you are. Share your experience in the comments below. What has hiding looked like for you? What is one small step you can take today toward reclaiming your power? Let us build a community of INFJs who refuse to shrink, who support each other in the practice of becoming fully who we are. And if you want to continue this exploration, to go deeper into what it means to live as a powerful, authentic INFJ, subscribe to this channel. This is not just content. This is a conversation, an ongoing exploration of what it means to stop hiding and start living. You belong here.